Over the past few years, we've talked about so many massive box office disappointments when it comes to superhero movies, whether it's Marvel or DC. But the difference is the mainstream media usually isn't talking about it that way, at least not at first. Maybe eventually they'll admit that it was disappointing, but usually it's all rainbows and sunshine for opening weekend. They're trying to push it, they're trying to spin it, they're trying to do everything they can to cover for these studios. But this time is a little different. The Flash is such a massive bomb and such a disaster for DC that not even the mainstream media can deny that, as they quote, it's an unmitigated disaster. Why the Flash box office bust is an unmitigated disaster for Warner Brothers. And it goes further than just the Flash. Obviously, they still have more movies that they have to release this year, including Blue Beetle, including Aquaman. And reportedly, they've got over $1.1 billion invested in all the movies they're supposed to release this year, and The Flash was one of the things they were betting on, one of the things they were counting on to be able to recoup some of that money, and now that is not going to be the case. That is out of the question. This is a nightmare for DC and for Warner Brothers. Spoiler alert, this story mentions a few significant plot developments in The Flash currently in theaters, so hey, spoiler alert if you don't want to be spoiled for The Flash. In the climax, Barry Allen watches helplessly as time-hopping escapades cause several other superhero universes to careen into each other. Ironically, Warner Brothers is facing almost an identical dilemma, and the stakes could be nearly as existential. The Flash is the second of 4 mega-budgeted DC adaptations to release this year, starting with Shazam, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman Lost Kingdom in August and December, respectively. Yet these movies were conceived and greenlit by an executive team that have all but departed. New studio chiefs James Gunn and Peter Safran have announced they'll reboot the DC franchise. This left Warner's in one of the worst rock and a hard place conundrums in recent memory. Its 2023 slate are now orphans in the cinematic universe, but the studio still needs audiences to see them on a blockbuster scale. Quote, "It's perhaps unavoidable, but a terrible case of timing. Audiences don't feel like they have to invest 2 hours in their life because it's not going to matter going forward." And, there's been some other people, actually, that have noticed the same thing that we've been saying for a long time, talking about superhero fatigue. What's the solution to superhero fatigue, according to the mainstream media? Oh, make better movies. It's almost like we've been saying that for years now, that it's not just the superhero genre, it's the fact that there's so many shitty superhero movies out there. People have lost faith in brands. People have lost faith in Marvel to put out something positive. That's why even though Guardians of the Galaxy did eventually have good legs and made a profit, its opening weekend was pretty sad compared to where people expected, because people just didn't trust that Marvel was going to put out another hit. And DC, no one has any faith in DC going forward. But here's where they get into these numbers. Indeed, things have not been going well. The production budgets and likely marketing spends for these 4 films will cost between $1.1 to $1.2 billion in total, according to experts outside the studio. I tend to think it might be a little more based on what we know of the Shazam budget, based on what we know of the Flash budget, what they've said versus what insiders have reported. It could potentially be even more than that. But Shazam has already bombed, and The Flash opened to mere $55 million in the U.S., grossing $135 million worldwide. It did not get better on Juneteenth, the holiday weekend they were counting on. It was a pathetic bomb on Juneteenth and the day after. The Flash, it's not looking good. This thing is going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars for Warner Brothers. The movie should be opening at $120 million domestic, says an industry veteran. This is an unmitigated disaster. I've used that phrase several times when talking about various different superhero movies. Now you actually have the mainstream media catching on. They're late to the party, but finally here they are. No spin when it comes to The Flash, just straight up, yeah, this is really fucking bad. Now, of course, they go and they make excuses about Ezra Miller not being part of the campaign, all the problems he had. Oh, how are people supposed to be invested? You know what? If they'd been making good movies, if Black Adam had been good, if it had been well received, then I think you would see more people turn on to The Flash, even though they know that it might not connect to anything. People went and saw Joker knowing that it was just a standalone thing. No promise that it would connect to anything. That made $1 billion at the box office, but that was good, and it had great word of mouth. So, despite all of these hurdles that you have to overcome and the fact that, yeah, maybe it's not connecting to anything, people don't know if it's going to connect, still, if you make good movies, people will talk well about them and people will go see them. Now, that's not always the case. There's certainly good movies that haven't done well in the box office for one reason or another, and bad movies that have done great in the box office. In general, at the end of the day, if you make good shit, people will come and see it. And unfortunately for DC, they've not been doing that. Unfortunately for Marvel, that's the state that they're at as well. Maybe not as dire right now as DC, certainly. But The Flash is completely and totally bombing at the box office. And now you have the mainstream media that can't make any more excuses for Ezra Miller, can't make any more excuses for DC or Warner Brothers. They are being forced to admit that, yes, this is a complete and total unmitigated disaster. Let me know your thoughts about all this in the comment section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.